Light on?
No.
No?
Can you transfer sound?
No. We can make it louder now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Being together is a visible, profound claim that we have faith in one another. Let it be a dance we do. We are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle. The covenant of our fellowship says who we are. Do not erase any part of who you are. Now, Catherine Lamar will do a reading from C.S. Lewis.
Okay, this is from an essay entitled The Case for Christianity. God created things which had free will. That means creatures which can go wrong or right. Some people think they can imagine a creature which was free, but had no possibility of going wrong. But I can't. If a thing is free to be good, it's also free to be bad. And free will is what has made evil possible. Why then did God give them free will? Because free will, though it makes evil possible, is also the only thing that makes possible any love or goodness or joy worth having. A world of automata, of creatures that work like machines, would hardly be worth creating. The happiness which God designs for his higher creatures is the happiness of being freely, voluntarily united to him and to each other in an ecstasy of love and delight, compared with which the most rapturous love between a man and a woman on this earth is mere milk and water. And for that, they've got to be free. Of course, God knew what would happen if they used their freedom the wrong way. Apparently, he thought it worth the risk. If God thinks the state of war in the universe is worth paying for the free will, that is, for making a royal world in which creatures can do real good or harm, and something of real importance can happen, instead of a toy world which only moves when he pulls the strings, then we may take it is worth paying. And now Levon will introduce our speaker for today.
Bob Meyerson was born November 2nd, 1933 in Newark, New Jersey. He grew up in Irvington, New Jersey. He's a graduate of Fairleigh Dickinson University, 4 years in the U.S. Navy during Korean War, moved to California in 1978, married Diane Doty in 1984, 2 children from previous marriage, 2 grandchildren, moved to Castro Valley in 1984. Bob spent his career in various insurance claims capacities, including supervision of offices on 5 continents. He attended Star King Unitarian Universalist Church in Hayward and became a UU in 2001. I was always a UU, but didn't know it till then. He's led services at Star King and about 6 or 7 churches in Northern California. Bob is a folk music buff, and he feels that carrying on the folk tradition is one of his callings. He has had a long history of supporting liberal causes from his early 20s and ongoing. Civil rights have been a passion with Bob since his teenage years. He was the founder and first president of the West Essex, New Jersey Human Relations Council and chairperson of the Caldwell, New Jersey Board of Health. Bob will be leading the Zoom service on today, September 16th. The service topic is Thoughts Are Free, from a 500-year-old German folk song. Bob will talk about how free thought and free expression can be instruments of positive change, whether for major political reasons or religious thought.
Thank you, thank you, Levon. Appreciate all the nice things you've said. Anyway, I don't know whether I thought of the song first, because I've known this song for years, or whether I thought of the topic first. Whether this old German folk song jumped into my mind, and it did, and it does often. The song is 500 years old and goes back to the peasant wars in Germany. It seems to emerge every 100 years or so when times get especially bad. playwright Schiller put it into one of his plays. Students sang it during the Bismarck reign. Hitler banned it. The translation into English, Arthur Kevis, is, according to a German scholar I know, impeccably accurate. I'm hoping it survives the rough treatment it's about to receive. Video, there we go. No.
Yeah.
Die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts freely flower. Die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts give me power. No scholar can map them, no hunter can trap them, no man can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no man can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. So I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure. My conscience decrees, this night I must treasure. My purpose will cater to Duke or dictator, no man can deny. The Gedanken sind frei, no man can deny. The Gedanken sind frei. And should tyrants take me and throw me in prison, my thoughts will burst free like blossoms in season. Foundations will crumble and statues will tumble and true men will cry. Die Gedanken sind frei, and people will cry. Die Gedanken sind frei. What do you think?
Thoughts are indeed meant to be free. There'll always be some who disagree with that premise, but many of us equate the freedom of thought to every other freedom, which is our birthright. And once we relinquish one, we are on the road to self-destruction. Levon and I will now I will light the chalice as Levon reads the words for the chalice lighting. Levon?
Flaming chalice burning bright, we light this chalice for the light of truth. May the light of this chalice give light and warmth to our family in times of light and times of darkness. We light this chalice to celebrate the love within us, among us, and all around us, for daylight and darkness. Let's have some music.
The music.
And we'll have some meditative music. Come now, fount of every blessing.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing desperation, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us bind ourselves in union, help our hands tell of our love. With thine aid, O fount of justice, earth be fair as heaven above.
Today's story for all ages is from a book about Greta Thunberg called Our House is on Fire. Greta is a quiet girl who led a quiet life in the city of Stockholm, which is in Sweden. Her dog Roxy was her friend. All my life I've been invisible, the invisible girl in the back who doesn't say anything. In school, she felt alone. Then one day, Greta's teacher talked to the class about the climate, about how our planet is getting warmer, about how the polar ice is melting, about how animals' lives are threatened, and ours too. That's when Greta's life changed. She read for hours and watched film after film about our warming world. Greta could think about one thing for a very, very long time. She saw ice melting into the sea, disappearing. She saw mighty winds and torrential rains howling across the land. She saw coral reefs deep down in the sea, pale as ghosts, bleached by the warming waters. Greta saw living creatures everywhere, struggling to stay alive. Greta saw floodwaters covering houses and people and animals. She saw cities swallowed under rising oceans. She saw the smoldering sun scorch the earth, leaving it bone dry. She saw blazing wildfires racing through forests. Our house is on fire. Greta became sad, thinking about the climate all the time. She barely ate or spoke. Those pictures were stuck in my mind. The sad days went on for a long time, each day more unhappy than the next. There might not be a world to live in when she grows up. What use is school without a future? What can I do? She wondered. Greta decided to go on strike from school for the climate. Her parents understood. Greta skipped school one Friday and took her poster, which said, "School Strike for Climate," to the Parliament building to sit on strike. She hoped lawmakers would see her. People walked past, too busy to notice. Greta felt invisible there too. She was at the Parliament building every Friday, even in the rain. Then word of her strike began to spread. Little by little, other school strikers joined her. On Fridays, Stockholm schools were a bit empty. More people started noticing the child strikers, and word spread through cyberspace about the Friday school strikes. Children started striking everywhere. If grown-ups won't act to save the planet, children will. The quiet girl who always felt invisible was asked to speak to very important people at the United Nations climate talks in Poland. Greta only spoke when she thought it was necessary. You say you love your children above all else, and yet you are stealing their future in front of their very eyes. We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground. The quiet girl was invited to speak to important people at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. It was necessary to speak. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. I want you to act as if the house was on fire, because it is. Greta's protest, all alone, sparked a worldwide children's march. Her quiet voice, joined by thousands of voices, became a roar. Can you hear us? And now some more meditative music by a singer-songwriter who goes by the moniker on YouTube of This Is Leah. And she wrote this at the end of 2020. It was the first time she'd had a chance to record it with studio musicians.
Your freedom right now. Send your freedom right now into my open heart and let me shine with your freedom. Send your wisdom right now. Send your wisdom right now into my open heart and let me shine with your perfect wisdom. Send your love right now. Send your love right now into my open heart and let me shine with your perfect love. And your kindness right now. Send your kindness right now into my open heart and let me shine with that kindness. Send your sweet peace, your sweet abiding peace right now. Send your sweet peace right now into my open heart. Let me shine with that sweet, sweet peace. Send your freedom right now. Send your freedom right now.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Bob, and my topic today is freedom of thought, freedom of speech. My message today is personal, but I think it may sound all too familiar to many of you. I suspect that, like many others here today, the church I attend is the one in which I take the most interest. I officially professed my religious choice there in 2001. I was aware that there was this sort of home office called the UUA. It never dawned on me how much influence over my church that organization had. I've never spent much time exploring what was going on in the UUA, Frankly, the only church I was concerned with was the one I attend on Sunday. But in the past few years, what I was hearing was becoming very dogmatic, and it seemed that the message more and more was guilt. Guilt can be a persuasive force. Other religions have used it throughout the ages. But I needed to take personal responsibility for any and all evils which happened or were happening in my country. As a white male, I was automatically deemed a white supremacist, male chauvinist, hater of any sexual expression which differed from my own, etc., etc. My rejection of these stereotypes with their message of guilt was greeted at first by respectful, polite rebuttal or simple silence. The day I began to piece together what was happening and from where it was coming was the same day I was informed by our interim minister, after listening to a previous sermon, "You can't be trusted to speak to this congregation." I'll refer to this a little bit later in a service that Roy Dickerson and I gave a few months before. When I posed the question, does that mean freedom of expression only applies when I agree with you? No reply. That was the end of any budding relationship with that minister or her most ardent, yes, woke followers. This after 20 years of conducting many services at my home church and several other UU churches around Northern and Central California. Too controversial. That is when I realized that the new rules were coming from above, and most Sundays I was listening to nothing more than a UUA commercial posing as a sermon. From the pulpit came the first of many comments about the NAUA, even before it was incorporated. You can't be a member of the UUA and this new group. That's when I decided to explore this newly found seditious group. But even prior to doing that, I challenged the minister to remove me from the congregation if I embraced the group. Of course, silence. Thereafter, the weekly commercial usually included unsubstantiated comments like, "This NAUA group wants to destroy the UUA and take it over. Reverend Eckloff's book shows that he is a serial liar." Of course, upon questioning this proposition, most of the people believing that have never bothered to read the book. I think a good example of what can happen when there exists confusion between liberalism and fascism occurred on July 4th, 2022. Roy Dickerson and I had somehow convinced the powers at our church that we would share the pulpit, much to the consternation of some of the more in step with our interim ministers' sycophantic adherence to UUA current dogma. Roy and I conducted a pretty non-controversial service, we thought, although we did remove some of the saccharine references to the Ohlone Indians. The Ohlone Indians were the native tribe that inhabited the Hayward area of California, the area that we were in. And they had been there for a long time. But I guess it was out of step to suggest that this tribe was composed of human beings, not perfect gods who never fought or did anything negative, just, quote, lived in peace and harmony for thousands of years. Several members of the congregation approached me after the service. Much appreciation for the service was expressed with a couple of people, expressing their feeling that, "I'm getting my church back, Bob," but that sentiment was not universal. One member of the church board went so far as to say that Roy and I should never be allowed to speak here again, and we should remove this service from the archives as though it never happened. A unique statement from a UU church official who believes strongly in freedom of expression. Think about this, erasing it from history. I was a little boy during World War II, No TV or much actual viewing what was going on in the war. But there were newsreels shown in between feature films at the local theater. One which made an indelible impression on me showed a group of German soldiers tossing hundreds of books into a blazing fire. Even at that age, I recognized what it meant to try to destroy history by erasing it. Removing history from important written records or removing a worship service from a church's history, I think both are dangerous. But then Reverend Todd is far more familiar with the effects of book burning than I will ever be. This is about the time that I realized that there were no ground rules. Censorship of diverse opinions, slandering people, even lying from the pulpit seemed to be acceptable tactics. And then I dug deeper. I found here are some of the things I heard from Beacon Street, Boston. America, with its tradition of slavery, hadn't really improved, and I, as a white male, was by definition a white supremacist, probably anti-sexual diversity, and my house was likely built on land owned by native tribes, the Ohlonies. So I'm implicitly responsible for all the ills visited on American Indians. And because of people like me, we've made so little progress in our country. Let's examine some of that progress made in this country. To state that there's been little progress, I've been around quite a while. In my lifetime, I have watched and participated in trying to make change happen. And I absolutely reject the idea that we've made no progress. When I was a boy, seeing an interracial couple was a rarity. Black people and white people did not socialize. Now turn on your TV and note the depiction of people of color, of sexually diverse couples, particularly watch the commercials. They tell me if we've made any progress. You tell me. As to acceptance of this progress, unless you believe advertisers aren't motivated by profit, public attitudes have changed since I was a boy. So the barrage of guilt keeps coming. I will agree that as a white male, I've had an unearned advantage. But does that mean that I am a white supremacist? I reject that, and I resent the people who make such judgments. Who among them is willing to give back his or her land to Native Americans? Who will dare to tell me that we've all been better off now had people like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and Abraham Lincoln never lived? They were people of their times in which they lived. So easy to judge them by 2023 standard. So very easy. And what of the northern abolitionists, like the New Hampshire fabric and clothing manufacturers, those holier than thou abolitionists whose products became global standards and who had competitive advantages because they began with the raw material, cotton purchased because of slave labor from our South. Those New Englanders, too, were people of their times. So I go back to the guilt being aimed at us by people of our times. Instead of recognizing that we cannot change history by guilt and wringing our hands in despair, maybe we should spend our time in recognizing some things we are able to change. Like that New England fabric manufacturer, we are people of the times in which we live. Perhaps people 200 years from now will look back at us and wonder how we were able to justify maintaining a high standard of living in our daily support of slave labor around the world, buying products assembled by children, earning pennies an hour around the world. How many of us question the labor put into that computer or cell phone? How is it that we can, without thinking twice, purchase throwaway articles of clothing sewn together by women making $1 a day in some sweatshop? Out of sight, out of mind. Not one American slave who ever existed will be freed by my guilt. And those who peddle that guilt for their own power might spend more time focusing on things we can exercise control over. So as the climate continues in its efforts to end the human race, will anyone get satisfaction if that last human to take that last breath of oxygen, if that person is a Black, transgender, Native American with disabilities? Let us always try to correct injustice, but that is not an idea which should be dividing us. We cannot alter past history, but we could at least try to influence future history. So much easier to assume guilt for the past than to evaluate our actions in the present. The song says thoughts are free. I can only add, but once they are publicly expressed, verbally or in writing, you may have to pay a price for expressing them. I've done that, and I'll tell you, to me, it was well worth the price. But I must add that I too have enjoyed an easier life because of my my country's checkered past. Recognizing complicity in a flawed system may just be a beginning to redemption. Finally, I'd like to just add the following few words. I really believe that the UUA and the NAUA have similar goals. How we get to realize them certainly differs. But let's not forget that if these goals are ever to be achieved, it will take all of us to get there. Thank you for your attention.
We appreciate your attending this service, and we hope you enjoyed it. We realize that there are many organizations that deserve your support. And if you feel that our new organization dedicated to preserving and promoting liberal religion is one of them, here are some ways that you can do so. And Roy is going to present on the screen an image with the QR code. So if you hold up your smartphone to the QR code, it'll take you to this link here, or you can type this in now or afterwards. Go to the NA Unitarian site, naunitarians.org/donate. Bob Meyerson will now extinguish the chalice. Please read along with the words that I just pasted into the chat. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And for the benediction, since this week is the 22nd anniversary of the terrible tragedy of September 11th, 2001, it was on the news this week, I was inspired to find a benediction that shared some of the thoughts and feelings from that terrible day. We remember those who are no longer present with us here, but who remain forever present in our hearts and who live on in our memories. We embrace those whose sorrow is unmeasurable. We have no cure for sorrow, only the comforting love of those who are closest to us. We honor those in uniform who continue courageously to run toward danger on our behalf. May we be worthy of their courage and sacrifice. And we ask our civic leaders to always guide us in ways that promote peace over war, tolerance over intolerance, building bridges over walls, reason over blind passion, and love over hate. May all here find hope in their days and comfort in their nights. Let us go now in peace. Amen. And final words, well, we're now planning on creating several breakout rooms to allow you all to discuss any topics of interest. So if you're interested in participating, just stay connected. You'll be invited to join one of the rooms. And I also wanted to remind you of an upcoming NAUA Academy session this Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time, with the subject Left versus Left, What's Happening Here Ain't Clear. You can sign up to get a reminder notification at the naunitarians.org website. Thank you.